जाताय तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः. Hare Krishna. Welcome back to our Bhagavad Gita Bhakti Shastri course. We are now in the 13th chapter, beginning with the Jnana section of the Bhagavad Gita. Chapters 1 to 12 is about karma and how karma leads to bhakti. Chapters 7 to 12 is about bhakti, and chapters 13 to 18 is about jnana and how jnana leads to bhakti. So here, the 13th chapter begins with a question from Arjuna. And as I discussed earlier, the 10th chapter, not necessarily the beginning, but in the 10th chapter, after Krishna stops speaking in the 11th verse of Shloki Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks a question, and that leads the discussion forward. So in the 10th, 11th, 12th and 13th chapters, the topics of discussion are generated by Arjuna's questions. So now we may ask, what generates Arjuna's questions? It is not necessary that something in the previous chapter normally necessarily has to lead to that question. Yes, we discussed how in the 10th chapter, in the 11th chapter, the question comes from the 10th chapter. 11th chapter, at the end of the 10th chapter, Krishna has said that in 10.42 that ekam shena sthito jagat, that by one fragment I pervade the whole creation. I pervade and sustain the whole creation. So then, based on that, Arjuna asked the question, can you show me the Virat Rupa? But that is only one of the stimulants for that question. Another question, another stimulant also is that Arjuna wants to have a visual, verifiable demonstration of Krishna's supremacy for all time as a pramana, as a standard. Then in the 10th chapter itself, the question on Vibhuti is not necessarily immediately related with something before. It's based on the understanding that yes, Krishna, one has to think about Krishna, but it's difficult to think about Krishna at all times. So how can one think about Krishna within material nature? In the 12th chapter, question is not immediately related with the 11th chapter. And 13th chapter question is also not immediately related with the 12th chapter or anything that comes before that. The Bhagavad Gita is a discussion which happens in different ways. Sometimes when we meet a learned teacher, that learned teacher may speak on one subject, and after the class is over, we may not restrict ourselves to asking questions only with respect to that subject. If we have some general philosophical doubts also, we may ask those. So similarly, when Arjuna asks questions, his questions are not necessarily limited or connected to what was discussed earlier. Arjuna is living in a Vedic culture, and there are many terms which he has already heard, and he would like to have those terms clarified. So we discussed earlier how terms are verbal and concepts are intellectual. So both need to be clarified. So for example, in the 12th chapter, when he asks about who are more intimately united with him, those who worship the personal manifestation or the impersonal manifestation. So that is a conceptual clarification. There don't necessarily any specific terms involved. But now here, Arjuna in the 13th chapter, when he asks a question, he will be using some specific terms. Of course, those terms are associated with concepts. But he's asking, what do those terms mean? So let's look at the 13th chapter overview, and then we'll go into the verses one by one. So we have Arjuna's 6 questions. In the 6 questions, that is kshetra and kshetrajna. So those questions are answered progressively by Krishna. So the answer to the question about what is kshetra and what is the kshetrajna, that is from verses 2 to 7. So actually this is the 3rd and 4th question which is answered first. Then what is jnana is answered in 8 to 12. Then what is jnaya is answered in 13 to 19. This is the answer to the 5th and 6th question. And then Krishna comes back to answer the 1st and 2nd questions. So that is what is Prakriti and what is Purusha, how do they interact? And then how does it all come together? So 27 to 35 is like a bonus section where Krishna offers Jnana Chakshu, the eyes of knowledge by which one can see reality beyond how it appears at a material level, at a material level of perception. So to see with philosophical vision instead of just material vision, that's what the last section enables one to do. So let's now look at Arjuna's questions. And Krishna's answer, Arjuna Vacha Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Kshetram Kshetragyameva Cha Etad Veditum Ichchami Jnanam Jnayam Cha Keshava. So Arjuna is asking 6 terms. What is Prakriti and what is Purusha? Etad Veditum Ichchami. Arjuna, Krishna says Veditum Ichchami. This I wish to know. Veditum is to know. So Kshetram Kshetragyameva Cha, that the kshetra is the field of knowledge and the knower. Jnanam Jnayam Cha Keshava. So Jnana is literally speaking knowledge. Jnaya is that which is to be known. Keshava. So what now? These terms are familiar terms in the Vedic context, but what do they exactly mean? That's what Arjuna wants to know. No, Krishna replies, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Idam Shariram Kaunteya Kshetramithyabhidhiyate Etadyo Vetitam Prahu Kshetragya iti tadvidaha. So Idam Shariram Kaunteya, this body. Krishna points to Arjuna's body and he says Idam Shariram. This body is the kshetra. It is called as Abhidhiyate. Abhidhiyate means it is known as. Etad Yoveti, one who knows it, Tam Prahu, that entity is known as Kshetragya. Iti tadvidaha. So tadvidaha means those who know this. Tad vidaha. Vidaha means to know. Tad is that. So Krishna is quoting here the knowers of the subject. He says the knowers call this body the kshetra and the knower as kshetragya. So in one sense, Krishna doesn't tell who is the knower. He just says one who knows it is called the kshetragya. Now, before we go into the technicalities of the verse, first, an important point with respect to patantara. Patantara means, in a traditional culture, when there were people who were called as copiers or transcribers, their job was that they would have to rewrite the scripture, not in terms of editing, but keeping it same and copying it, because when the scriptures are there generation after generation, they don't last. The paper gets decayed, the paper gets spoiled, and then we have to copy that. And there were no Xerox machines or something like that in the past, so people would have to write it manually. So while writing manually, sometimes there would be a patantara bheda. Bheda means difference. Patantara means, and there are different versions of the same manuscript. So this is the technical word used for this is recension. So recension means a different rendition of the manuscript. So for example, there may be some renditions where some words might be slightly different. So there is a prayer of Prahlad Maharaj where Naitan Manas Tava Katha, no, Brahmadaya Suragana Munayotha Siddha Sattvaikatam Gatayo Vachasam Pravahai Naradhitum Puruganairadhuna Pipipru Kim Toshtumarati Same Harirugra Jate. So here it's described that this is the first prayer among the series of prayers that Prahlad Maharaj offers to Lord Nrsimhadev, and therein he prays that, my dear Lord, if Devtas like Brahmaji, whose words like a flow of nectar, if they couldn't satisfy you, I have been low born, how can my words satisfy you? So the word here is gatayo. Now in some recensions, instead of gatayo, it is matayo. Now if you look at the overall meaning, the meaning doesn't change so much. It remains the same. So gatayo means like the flow, matayo means it's their opinion. So either way, if the word doesn't affect much the overall understanding of the verse. So like that, there are often different recensions with minor variations among them. And generally within the traditional circles, whenever any commentary is written, for say Vyasatirtha is a famous Madhva scholar, when he writes a commentary, generally the first thing that he would do is he would deal with the issues of differences in various recensions. And he would say, okay, this is in this recension I found this verse to be like this, in this recension I found this verse to be like this, in this recension I found this verse to be like this. And then he would address those issues, and he would give, okay, because this recension is a little older, or this recension is more coherent, or this is the recension in which is more authorized because we have it coming down in the tradition, and this is what has been commented on. So then I choose this recension. So it is a well-known possibility to err as human, and when humans are copying things, it's always possible that some error can come up. So when the error comes up, at that time, how is the error dealt with? By comparing with various recensions. So that is a natural thing which is done so as to ensure that the human error factor is minimized. But overall, when the scriptures are preserved in the tradition, then the variations in the recensions become less and less. And especially if a book has been preserved in the tradition, especially if a book has been commented on, then the commentary is normally preserved within that tradition, and along with that the book verse is also preserved. So then it becomes clear, okay, this is the verse which this particular acharya has commented on, and that way both remain the same. So for example, we have Sridhar Swami's commentary, which almost goes down to almost nearly somewhere like 1,000 years old, and on the Bhagavatam, and we have the Bhagavatam today, and we see practically all the verses are the same. So what does it indicate? That for 1,000 years things have not changed. And similarly, we have Shankaracharya's Bhagavad Gita and his commentary, and similarly we look at the Bhagavad Gita which we have, and we look that he's commenting on the same verses. So the commentaries of different acharyas may be different, but when the commentary is preserved, along with that the verses are also preserved. So we can say that at least for 1,500 years, Shankaracharya came almost 1,400 years ago. So the verses of the Gita also have not changed, and which is remarkable, which is indicative of the enormous amount of care that has been taken for preserving the fidelity of the scripture. So when we talk about preserving the fidelity of the scripture, what exactly do we mean by that? That means now ultimately the scriptures are not just texts which are present in some manuscript, some form of manuscript or some leaves or some kind of paper or whatever. The scriptures are also living wisdom that is present in the hearts of those who have internalized the preachings of the scriptures and have molded their life accordingly. So why am I talking about all this right now? Because generally even secular scholars of religion, those who have studied the Bhagavad Gita, they acknowledge that Bhagavad Gita is one of the stablest scriptures in terms of manuscript, in terms of, say, the agreement in various recensions. So there are very, very few disagreements in terms of what the content of the Gita is. So as I mentioned earlier, there was a commentator called named Abhinav Gupta. He tried to prove that the Bhagavad Gita, he was a Shaivite, Kashmiri Shaivite, and he tried to prove that the Bhagavad Gita leads to the conclusion that Shiva is the supreme absolute truth. Now it is entirely untenable conclusion, because the word Shiva doesn't come also in the Bhagavad Gita so much. But even in his commentary, there are not much differences in the verses. So that means even he recognized that he cannot, the verses are the same and the verses cannot be changed, because there are so many copies of the book available. And if somebody just tries to insert some words or remove some words, then it creates a lot of, then it will immediately be caught and pointed out. That time, although the modern means of technology were not there, but still there was severe and serious intellectual competition, you could say, even warfare among the various schools of thought that were prevalent. And everybody had to use logic and scripture to establish the validity and veracity of their school of thought. So Nobody could go around playing around, changing the content of the scripture itself. So the point is, in some recensions of the Gita, although the Gita overall is very stable, 13.1 is not present. 13.1 is Arjuna's question. So now, for argument's sake, even if we say Arjuna never asked this question, actually it makes no difference, because essentially, even without Arjuna's question, the topic is slightly a tangent. Even if there is no question by Arjuna, what Krishna is going to speak is not going to change. That the verses are there as it is. And then the question itself begs itself: why did Krishna suddenly start speaking on this topic of kshetra and kshetragya and jnana and gyeya and purusha and prakriti? So our acharyas have generally included this verse in their commentaries in the Gita as the starting of the chapter 13. So some traditional scholars may not include it, and we don't have to get into a debate over that. If you look at the question, it brings some sort of context and continuity to the topic that Krishna takes up, and without it, there seems to be sudden shift, sudden jump, and that's why it is tenable that Arjuna would have asked a question. But we don't have to be absolutely insistent about it. If some people want to say that no, this verse was not there, okay, it's not there. In the normal Gita, in the Gita press, Gita, which is widely distributed in India, the Arjuna's question is often not kept over there. So either way, the important point is not the presence or absence of the question. The important point is the understanding the concepts that are explained over here. So let's go to those concepts. So that means, even if the verse is not there as a question, still then all what we have to accept is Krishna suddenly starts talking about a different topic. And why does Krishna suddenly start off talking of a different topic? Because Krishna wants to clarify concepts further. Krishna has explained how bhakti is superior to jnana, is to impersonal worship, which is also part of jnana. But now Krishna wants to clarify other terms. So there is Sankhya. Sankhya, this word has come earlier in the third and fifth chapters especially. Sankhya has come. So it is. So Sankhya is analysis of material nature into its components, so that one can go beyond and ultimately attain to a clear understanding of what lies beyond matter. So the material world has so much variety, which is quite captivating and bewildering, that we just get caught up in the forms and the appearances. But once one understands that these forms and appearances are made by some fundamental elements, and they themselves are not very captivating. If just air is blowing along, air is not going to captivate me, nor is water going to captivate me. It's not that if a glass of water is going to be kept before me. It's not that I'm going to be constantly lost, fascinated, finding the whole thing irresistible. No, I will be wanting to just get drink water if I need it, if I'm thirsty, but otherwise I won't be at all concerned about it. It is not going to distract me so much. So when we analyze the material world into its components, then we understand these components are not very attractive. There's no need for me to get captivated by these material things. And then we can go beyond and look at what is it that brings us alive, what is it the real substance, what is it that actually is the basis of life and love. And that we go to the spiritual reality where there is the soul and there is ultimately super soul. So here the focus is on analyzing matter and its interaction with consciousness. So Srila Prabhupada calls this chapter as Nature, the Enjoyer and Consciousness. Nature, the Enjoyer and Consciousness. So now how does this nomenclature come about? Nature, the Enjoyer and Consciousness. So there is what is Krishna's question? Sorry, Arjuna's question is, what is kshetra, what is kshetragya, what is purusha, what is prakriti, what is jnana and what is gyeya. So in this, if you see, generally speaking, one of them is conscious, the other is not so much. So prakriti is not conscious, kshetra is not conscious, jnana is conscious, purusha is conscious, and Purusha is conscious. So Gaya, Purusha and Kshetragya, they are conscious. So now we will, as we move forward, we will see how these terms, they basically, there are three entities which are being talked about. So there is, as we discussed earlier, the Tattvatraya, Jagat, Jiva and Jagadish. So Jagat is refers to material nature, so that is Prakriti and Purusha. That is Prakriti and Kshetra. Then Jiva can be either the Prakriti, Jiva can be the Purusha, or Jiva can be the Kshetragya. Similarly, Ishvara can be the Kshetragya, or Ishvara can be the Kshetra. It can be the Purusha also. We'll discuss this as we move forward. Right now it might seem a little bit abstract and confusing. But the point is these three entities. So nature basically refers to material nature. The enjoyer refers to the Ishvara, that is Supreme Lord. And consciousness refers to the Jiva. That's how Prabhupada uses this name. So now, let's look at Srila Prabhupada's purport. So the field of activity is the body. So now what is exactly the meaning of kshetra? Now kshetra is a part of Prakriti. Prakriti is material nature. Now all around me, all around you is material nature. But we can't control all of material nature. We can control only some of its parts. Now, for example, if I'm sitting here, I'm able to move my hand up and down. But I can't move your hand up and down. I can't control material nature beyond what is my jurisdiction of influence. So the kshetra refers to the area of influence. So at a preliminary level, the kshetra is the body. All of us have some influence over the body. Of course, we do not have complete influence or complete control over the body. There is much that happens in the body at a subconscious level. That means not subconscious in terms of psychologically subconscious. I'm talking of, say, subconscious in terms of involuntary. Right now I'm breathing. So I'm not conscious that I'm breathing. Similarly, all of you are breathing. Inside your body, blood circulation is happening, digestion is happening. So all these are happening at an involuntary level and we are not conscious of them. But still, we do have some influence over what happens to the body and what we can do with the body. So this is our ordained kshetra. And different living entities have different levels of kshetra. Amoeba has a very, very tiny kshetra. Its body, that is inside the amoeba, is also a soul. But that soul, because of past karma, has been given a kshetra with a very small influence. Of course, it may also have its power in its own ways. It can also fulfill its needs for eating, sleeping, mating, defending. It also has its defense mechanisms. It also has its ingestion mechanism. It also has its reproduction mechanism. So in that sense, it is there. But beyond that, the important thing is that we have to recognize this particular overall understanding of scripture to be not indicative of the specifics involved, but of the broad principles involved. What do I mean by this? Actually, when we talk about kshetra, the word in a very narrow sense, the word kshetra can refer to a field. So agriculture. In agriculture, a farmer has a field. That is a narrow sense. But in the general sense, the word kshetra is used for many other functions. It is also used for, what is your field? That means, are you an engineer, or are you a doctor, are you a business executive, are you some kind of specialist or what? So that's what's your field. So the word field has many meanings. So that means when I say that somebody is an instrumentation control engineer, what does that mean? That means that person has that expertise in that field, has some amount of control and mastery in that field. So like that, all of us have a kshetra. So eagle has been given by the past karma that the soul has done earlier. That particular soul has been given the body of an eagle, and then the eagle flies fearlessly as an eagle over there. So like that, there are different living entities which act in different ways, and all these living entities which act in different ways are all focusing on simply one thing. That one thing is the practice of spiritual. They are trying to fulfill their desires in terms of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. and beyond that they are not involved in any further metaphysical quest. But in the human form, the kshetra is become a little more evolved, or rather our interaction with the kshetra has become much more evolved. The scientists may say that we have more brain substance than animals, than monkeys, and our brain cells are capable of more data processing. That may be true, but that is a facility that is being provided. There is the soul that is conscious, and the conscious soul is using this facility for doing more ratiocination, more deep thinking, more intellection. So it's like a child may have a small device with a little bit remote. So the child has a toy, press this button, the toy starts, and then stop the button, the toy starts. So there even if there is some IC chip or something like that inside that remote device, now that is a very preliminary technology. Now if the child is given a sophisticated laptop with all kinds of applications, the child's intelligence will be limited, and the child will not be able to do much with that laptop. Why? Because the child doesn't have the intelligence about how to use the laptop. So scientists did an experiment. They had the idea that everything can come by chance. So they took some monkeys. This is a real experiment which was done by scientists. They took some monkeys, a dozen monkeys, and they placed them in a sealed room with transparent walls, and they placed 12 computers in front of one computer for each monkey. And then their idea was, one of the scientists had made a claim that if we just give a monkey enough time and let the monkey type, then what will happen? The monkey will actually be able to go ahead and write the whole Hamlet. The monkey will be able to write the whole Hamlet. How does that work out? The monkey is able to write the whole Hamlet because ultimately everything happens by chance. So the monkey can also keep typing, and if it keeps typing, then it can eventually write everything. So when it writes everything in this way, at that time it is able to indicate, this will be a demonstration that ultimately everything can come by chance. So even the literary creations, which are poetic or literary masterpieces, they can also come by chance. Now when they put the monkeys in a computer lab with many computers, what did the monkeys do? No, some monkeys started playing with the computer, some monkeys started passing urine on the computer, some monkeys started beating the computer, and a few monkeys started typing on it. You can't control the typing, and then they type also. But actually, even if they did it for 7 full days, all that happened was they just got some garbage. No matter how much we try to see what has come about, the monkeys don't understand. And because they don't understand, they can't produce anything. So actually, I've written a whole article about this on my website in my science and spirituality book called When Monkeys Started Typing. So it's analysis, and it's indicative of the point that it's not just the technological gadgetry that is important. Along with the technological gadgetry, there has to be an evolved intelligence which can use that gadgetry. So the brain is like the gadgetry. So the animals may not be able to do philosophical thought, and that's because somebody may say that's because their brain is not developed. That is true, the brain is not developed, but the brain is just a facility. Even if the brain is developed, say if a monkey is placed in front of a computer, that means it is given a device which has much more data processing capacity, but then it itself does not have the intelligence to use it. So like that, the soul is the source of consciousness, and the soul has to use the brain. So the human brain has much more capacity it is a tool, and as a tool it has more sophistication than the tools which are animal brains. But still, no matter how sophisticated the tool may be, the artist, the artisan, the person who is using the tool, that person also has to have that level of capacity, that level of skills. So the soul has more evolved consciousness. So what is this? The soul's, when we say soul has more developed consciousness, as that doesn't refer just to the more developed brain. That refers to actually the subtle body is also a covering on the soul, and the subtle body, that covering avrutam jnanamete, that covering which is there of the contamination of lust, of the contamination of ignorance, that is lesser in a human body as compared to a non-human, subhuman body. So the important point to recognize here is that the kshetra which we human beings have, this has greater capacity for spiritual inquiry and spiritual realization than the other kshetras have. So now this is the kshetra, and Prabhupada explains through the example of a painter how one should not confuse everything. So these are the kshetra and the kshetrajna are different. The soul and the body which is being operated by the soul, they are different. So the body may have greater capacity, but the soul also has greater capacity in terms of a more refined, a more developed consciousness by which the soul can perceive things. So let's look at Srila Prabhupada's purport here. So Prabhupada explains how the owner is distinctly kshetrajna. So this is the kshetrajna, means I know my field. So for example, I know that, okay, I'm a male, or somebody else, I'm a female, I'm an Indian. All this awareness is called as kshetrajna. Now Prabhupada explains the flow of the chapter also, and after that he moves forward, and then he goes into the let's look at the example of the painter, and it comes in the next verse. So let's go to the next verse now. So first Krishna has described that one who knows this is the kshetrajna. So now who exactly is the kshetrajna? That's 13.3. He'll describe that there are two kshetrajnas over here. Kshetrajnam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata kshetrajnayor jnanam yattaj jnanam matam mama. Kshetrajnam. So kshetrajnam, one who is the knower of the kshetra. Chapi mam vidhi, I know that I am also the kshetrajna. But what kind of kshetrajna am I? Sarva kshetreshu bharata. Sarva kshetreshu, that I know all the fields. I know all the fields. And then kshetrajnayor jnanam, so that the knowledge of kshetra and kshetrajna, this knowledge, yattaj jnanam matam mama, this actually is what I define in my understanding is knowledge. Krishna is saying matam mama. Now Krishna may use the word matam mama, my opinion, it might seem to decrease the weight. Oh, it's just his opinion. Different people have different opinions. But actually, when Krishna uses the word matam mama, we understand that he is the absolute truth. And because he is the absolute truth, therefore whatever he speaks is the ultimate reality. And his opinion actually coincides with reality. Our opinion may also coincide with reality, but there are varying degrees of coincidences, and there are possibilities of divergences also of varying degree, depending on how accurate our perception is, how accurate our judgment is. But Krishna's opinion is the final authority, because his opinion completely coincides with reality. That's how it is, and that's how he sees it. There is no illusion that covers Krishna ever, because illusion is his potency. And just as the clouds don't cover the sun, similarly the illusory energy doesn't cover Krishna. So Krishna is saying basically matter and spirit. Knowledge of these two is knowledge according to him. So in modern science and modern education generally we just have material knowledge. We don't have so much spiritual knowledge. We study matter in its various combinations and its permutations. Krishna is saying matter and spirit. Kshetrajna. Kshetrajnayor jnanam, that the jnana which is kshetra and kshetrajna, that is yattaj jnanam matam mama. This is according to me knowledge. So Krishna is saying that knowledge means to have a broad understanding of all of reality, matter and spirit. Now in the kshetrajna, Krishna mentions that there are two kinds of kshetrajna. So it means we should know both kinds of kshetrajna. We should know the soul, and we should also know the super soul, who is actually the knower of all bodies. Now I know my body. For example, if there's some pain in my back, I will know about that. But actually, I don't know everything about everything. Krishna, on the other hand, because he's present in the super soul in all living beings, he's a kshetragya for all living beings. So that means knowledge of matter, knowledge of the soul, and knowledge of the super soul. All three knowledges are actually called the complete knowledge. So kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi. Kshetragyam cha api mam vidhi. That mam vidhi refers to that there is Arjuna, you should know that I am also the kshetragya. I am also the kshetragya. How am I the kshetragya? Because Krishna is also present in all living beings. Now sometimes the impersonalists try to interpret this verse to mean that the kshetragya is also me. That means that the previous verse is to say the etad yo vetti tam prahu kshetragya iti tadvidaha. So one who knows this is called as the kshetragya. So people extend that and they say that actually kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. Actually is I who am the kshetragya. So they try to conflate these two verses and they try to say both refer to the same reality, both refer to the same person and not to different persons. And that is not true. That is misleading. That is wrong. Why is it wrong? Because it is grammatically and logically also it is incorrect. We all know that we are not sarva kshetreshu bharata. Are we kshetragya of all bodies? No, obviously we are not kshetragya of all bodies. We are kshetragya of our own body, and even of our own body we are only partially kshetragya. We do not know everything that happens inside the body. So, but we certainly don't know anything that happens in another's body. If we were all kshetragya, then the doctors would not need to do any diagnosis in terms of having some sophisticated instruments and talking with the patient. The doctor would just, I'm also in your body, so I can know whatever is the problem with you. No, that won't work. It doesn't work like that. So even from a practical, functional point of view, we understand clearly that we do not know everything that happens in everyone's bodies. And if we see also what Krishna is telling over here, kshetragyam cha api mam vidhi, that I am also the kshetragya. Krishna is, what he is essentially saying is that, so if I say that, say X is in the room and I am also in the room. What does it mean? It means that X and I are not the same. Because otherwise I would not have used the word also. X is in the room, I am in the room. Now that maybe am I X? That sort of question might come up. But once the word also comes over there, X is in the room, I am also in the room. Cha means also. Then what it indicates is that actually these are two different entities, both of whom are present over here. And in this way, one can understand that Krishna is talking about two different people. So let's look at the purport now. So Prabhupada uses this interesting word, supernover. I am the supernover. So we know that. So actually, this super soul is Prabhupada's rendition. Not as far as I have seen. I have not seen other spiritual teachers use this word. Just like there is Superman, like that there is super soul. So the soul with superior capacities. As there's ordinary soul and there's super soul. So like that, now Prabhupada is using the word supernover also. So the word super is used as a superlative, to indicate glorification. Somebody say that was an exciting match, that was a cool match, that was a super cool match. So it just indicates superlativeness. Prabhupada improvises these words and uses them to indicate to indicate the philosophical truth and also to present in a way that people can connect with it. Supernover. So Sarva kshetreshu bharata. So Prabhupada used the example of a king and the citizens. The king is the original proprietor. So in every country, when there was the feudal rule at that time, when there was not necessarily feudal rule, when there was the monarchy, so at that time the king would be considered to be the owner of the whole kingdom. But at the same time, within the king's overarching ownership, there would also be further ownership. Okay, this kingdom belongs to this area, belongs to this particular person. This area belongs to this particular person. This area belongs to this particular person. So like that, different areas belong to different people. That's how it would be. Supreme Lord. So like that, our bodies do belong to us in one sense. In what sense? Yeah, they are under our control right now. That also, of course, is partial control, temporary control, but there is some control is there. But beyond that, these bodies are not in our control in the sense that they belong to the Supreme Lord. So we are not owners, we are tenants. We are tenants. How tenants? Because a tenant has some control over the house, but the tenant can be evicted any time. So like that, we do have some control. Right now I'm able to speak, but death can come at any moment and I may be evicted from this body. And when I'm evicted, then I have to go to whatever destination I am told. That's how it will work. So we will be evicted accordingly. So he's the original controller of the senses. The word Rishikesh is used also for Krishna, as Prabhupada quotes in the purport, that actually we are the controller of our senses, but Krishna is the super controller, the ultimate controller of all the senses. So in this way, actually Krishna is Sarva kshetreshu Bharata. He is the knower of all senses. Then Prabhupada quotes from the Vedic literature over here. Kshetrani sharirani bijam chapi shubha shubhe tani vette sa yogatma tatah kshetragya uchyate. Kshetrani sharirani. That the body is called as kshetra. Kshetrani sharirani bijam chapi shubha shubhe. So just as in the field seeds are sown, so similarly we do activities which are shubha and ashubha. So they become like the seeds. And tani vetti sa yogatma tatah kshetragya uchyate. Tani vetti. So one who knows this is called as that yoga atma is called as kshetragya. So basically this Sanskrit verse, which Prabhupada does not give a reference for, it explains who is the kshetra and who is the kshetragya. Tani vetti sa yoga atma tatah kshetragya uchyate. Kshetragya uchyate. That means that such a person is the actual kshetragya. Now moving forward, now what does this refer to? This can refer to the Atma, it can also refer to the Paramatma. So we do a Shubha and Shubha, but we don't necessarily know about what is Shubha and what is Ashubha. But the Supreme Lord knows what is Shubha and what is Shubha, and accordingly He acts. So that is, accordingly He gives us the rewards for our actions. He doesn't act Himself, He acts indirectly just as the judge acts. So then Prabhupada gives this example. So one should not confuse the painter, the painting and the easel. What is Prabhupada referring to over here? The painter, the painting and the easel. So this is an approximate example. It is not an entirely technically precise example. The point is that ultimate doer is the Supreme Lord. So he's like the painter. And the easel is the canvas on the stand and the canvas on which the painting happens. That is material nature. And the painting is basically the living entity who has a particular kshetra. So Prakriti is material nature, kshetra is the particular area of material nature over which I have control. So ultimately everything that is happening within material nature is happening under the control of the Supreme Lord. So the Lord is the painter. The painting is the living entity. So, and the canvas on which it's painted is the material nature. Now of course this particular example, as I said, is approximate, is not entirely accurate because it does not incorporate the point of the agency, the free will, the capacity for choice which the living entity has. So here the living entity is compared to a painting over here. The painting doesn't have its own free will. But the point again is that the emphasis of this verse is to talk about how there is a super knower, how there is a supreme knower who is the super soul, and he is the ultimate doer also. He is the supreme knower and he is the ultimate doer. Without his sanction nothing can happen. And Prabhupada quotes further from the Shveta Upanishad. Bhokta bhogyam preritam cha matva sarvam proktam trividham brahmametad. So here Prabhupada is quoting that Bhokta bhogyam preritaram cha matva. So preritaram cha matva. So the Jiva, the Supreme Lord and material nature, all three can be referred to by the word Brahman, because all three are ultimately manifestations of Brahman. Of course, there are different kinds of manifestations, but they are manifestations. So Prabhupada explains how they are not one, they are different, and to mistake them entirely to be one is to misunderstand the nature of the absolute truth. So before we go into this verse now, this goes into a little bit of technicalities. Let's look first at some other concepts. So this may seem, what is happening with kshetra and kshetragya? So first, I think we've discussed this concept. So there is chit. Chit is the original consciousness of the soul, that is para sachidananda. Chitta is the consciousness rooted in the material world. The consciousness rooted in the material world. So what does this chitta and chitta difference signify? We'll discuss this when we come to it a little later. But with respect to our particular current understanding, the soul has original consciousness which is capable of perceiving spiritual reality also. But right now I cannot perceive. Super soul is sitting next to me only, but I can't perceive. My consciousness is locked in matter. It's like a person watching a movie, and the person has the capacity to look at the theater all around. But the person is so caught in watching the movie, the person can't perceive anything else. All that is perceived is just the whatever is being displayed on the movie theater, on the screen, like that. So that's how it happens to all of us. That's how we also get caught in illusion. Chitta and chitta. And then I'll come back to chitta and chitta difference. But the point is that why the soul's how does the soul get connected with the material, with the physical kshetra? It is because its consciousness gets locked in a particular area. So now in the Upanishads, there are two ways of acquiring knowledge. There is Vyasthi and there is Samasthi. So Vyasthi is from individual to universal, and Samasthi is from universal to individual. What does it mean? From individual to universal or universal to individual? Okay, the point is that from individual to universal means, Prabhupada will often say, see, we are persons. I am a person, you are a person, my father is a person, your father is a person, your parents are persons. Therefore, God must also be a person. So that is from individual to universal. We observe ourselves, we study ourselves, and based on study of ourselves, we try to infer. If I am a part of God, so if I have these characteristics, what will be the characteristics that are present in the absolute truth? So like that, we move from individual to universal. And the other way of looking at it is Samasthi is from universal to individual. That means that we look at the totality of creation and then we try to think, okay, this totality of creation is like this, then what must the individual be like? So that's how we try to figure out. So this is basically two approaches to trying to understand the reality. So, in our day-to-day experiences, we work both ways. Science makes specific observations, and after making specific observations, they try to come up with universal patterns. And then, for example, Newton observed the fruit falling, and based on that, he came up with the laws of motion. And once he came up with the laws of motion, after that, subsequent motion that is observed using the frame of reference that is provided by the laws of motion and some other similar advances in physics. So just as there is this process of, for specific observations, the generic principles in terms of laws, and then making sense of specific observations thereafter. So basically these are two methods of intellection, methods of understanding what is the nature of reality. So now moving forward, what does kshetra refer to? Kshetra, as I said, refers to the area, the field of activity. So a prime minister may have as the kshetra the whole country. The prime minister can tell, okay, I'm going to declare an emergency. The whole functioning of the state can change accordingly. A child may have a kshetra, and a child may tell that, okay, now in my backyard where I'm playing, I declare emergency here. So nobody can do anything without my permission. The child may have some pets, and the pets may become very quiet. Our master wants us to be disciplined. Of course. So that this sort of kshetra is also conditional, which you have. The prime minister may decide, I want to make emergency, but prime minister, impose emergency, but the Prime Minister may get a heart attack and die. So that's also possible. But the important point is that not that there is the principle is the same, that different people have different kshetra and they try to control the kshetra. So now when we talk about kshetrajna, so the point of Vyasti and Samasti is here that just as we are knowers, the Supreme Lord is the Supreme Knower. So what we know in a very tiny infinitesimal quantity, the Lord knows in an infinite quantity. And the similarities are, both of us are qualitatively the same. So now when we want to look at the concept of kshetrajna, let's look at it in another way. So there are different koshas. So Brahmam Pucham Puttishta, Prabhupada will say in one of these purports over here. There is Annamay, there is Pranamay, there is Jnanamay, Vijnanamay and Anandamay. What are these 5 koshas? The koshas are, as it is said over here, they are objective levels of God energy and subjective levels of individual realization. There's no need to be intimidated by the terms here. A simple way to understand this is, if I am a citizen of India, then I have a citizenship card. So citizenship is also an objective. It's something. It's a objective reality. A Pakistani citizen is not an Indian citizen. An Egyptian citizen is not an Indian citizen. So citizenship is an objective reality. But at the same time, while it is objective reality, along with that, there is also subjective acceptance of that reality, subjective capacity to accept that reality. So there might be a dog in India, but the dog doesn't think I am an Indian. The dog doesn't even know that there is something called concept of India. So now the dog is physically, geographically living in the area that is called India. But the dog doesn't have the conception by which it can understand that I belong to India. Human beings, on the other hand, when they have that, they can have that subjective level of understanding. So citizenship is a nationality, citizenship is an objective reality in terms that some people are citizens, some people may not be citizens. And then beyond that subjective reality, there is also the objective reality. What is the objective reality? That objective reality is that, there is a subjective conception also, whether I understand it or not. So these 5 levels of energy, 5 levels, 5 koshas, they are in this way both subjective and objective. Let's look at the first one, then we'll understand what it means. Annamaya. So actually the word maya means to be full of. So Annamaya refers to be full of food. What does it mean? That means at the Annamaya level, the conception of life is for eating. Existence is eating. When a small baby is born, the baby, as soon as the placed near the mother and starts taking the mother's breast milk, and then after that, because that is the source of that is the source of nutrition, the source of security. When the baby is able to put its mouth on the mother's breasts and drink milk, it gets not only nutrition over it, it's security, safety. There's a pattern, there's a certain sense of certainty that comes because of that. So from that life-saving and life-shaping experience onwards, the baby's existence is defined through the potentiality of the presence of food. That means for a baby, everything is food. Generally, we may have seen babies, they take their finger and they put it in the mouth. And they keep sucking it. And sometimes the mother is not there, then some other male relative is there. Then they may just, they just put the finger in the mouth. And baby is thinking, I was thirsty, so maybe some milk will come out. And keep sucking the finger itself. So like that, different people suck in different. So basically, the baby defines everything in terms of food. It's an Annamaya kosh. That means everything is food. Sometimes the babies things have to be kept very carefully. The baby may pass out its own waste products, and then we need to pick it up and put it in its mouth also. Why? Because now for us it may be revolting to think about it only. We won't even want to get our nose or mouth anywhere near that stuff. But for the baby, everything is defined in terms of food. So Annamaya kosh, they see everything as potential food. So now, is it that there is some kind of covering on the consciousness because of which everything is Annamaya kosh? It's not a physical covering. All this is subtle. So that means a living entity can be in the Annamaya Kosh. So Annamaya Kosh is one level of consciousness. So we can be in that. So it's an objective reality. It's a level of consciousness. But subjectively, some people may be in Annamaya Kosh, some people may not be in Annamaya Kosh. Animals also in the initial stage they are in Annamaya Kosh, where everything is basically distinguished based on food. So beyond the Annamaya Kosh, the next Kosh is Pranamaya Kosh. So in Pranamaya Kosh, one starts seeing everything in terms of potential food. Now its relevance to life. So the baby may put in everything in the mouth, but then maybe it is a candle and puts it in the mouth. It starts crying after that. Then after I start understanding, oh, actually, this is not the way. I cannot decide everything based on whether it's eatability. I have to see its survival value. So most animals are primarily in the Pranamaya Kosh. Darwin talked about survival of the fittest. Prabhupada accepted the principle of survival of the fittest. But of course, Prabhupada had his own rebuttal. He said, even the fittest don't survive. In the struggle for material existence, nobody survives actually. Everybody dies. But the point is, that is an objective fact of animal kingdom. That everybody is in the Pranamaya Kosh. Everybody is trying to live. And the animals are eating food and they are also being afraid that the deer may be grazing and eating grass at the same time. The deer is also afraid. Maybe some tiger will come and pounce on me and tiger will eat me up also. So like that is Pranamaya Kosh. So generally, the Pranamaya Kosh is passionate, in the modes of passion and ignorance, and beyond that there is Jnanamaya. So at this stage, first initially everything is seen as food. At the level of Pranamaya, one starts understanding, okay, I have a particular existence and I have to maintain my existence. This is quite a gross bodily consciousness. So at the level of Jnanamaya Kosh, one starts becoming Prabhupada one becomes a philosopher. One starts becoming more aware of ideas and concepts. That is, one is aware of the subtle body at that particular time. And the consciousness is evolved and one starts thinking of one's subtle body. So one starts thinking about one's thoughts. See, all conscious beings think, but not all conscious beings can think about their thinking. We need to think about our thinking. And that capacity for thinking about our thinking requires self-awareness. Requires the capacity to distance ourselves. Okay, I'm feeling angry now. But I don't need to feel angry. So I look at my thoughts. There's nothing really so serious that I should have become angry about this. So thinking about our thinking, that capacity is what characterizes the Jnanamaya Kosh. Now that is actually Jnanamaya Kosh and the further koshas, further levels, they can be experienced only by human beings. Other animals cannot experience it so much. So beyond the Jnanamaya Kosh, there is the Vijnanamaya Kosh. At the level of the Vijnan, now the nomenclature may be slightly different depending on different versions of the books that were used. But overall, the broad understanding, the concepts is similar. So at Vijnanamaya, one starts becoming aware of the Atma. One starts understanding that beyond the body is the soul. And the soul is the basis of consciousness. The soul is the basis of awareness. The soul is the basis of all the action that is happening in the body. And beyond that, there is Anandamaya. In Anandamaya, one starts becoming conscious of the Supreme Lord. When it's conscious of the Supreme Lord, then there is supreme happiness in relationship with that. That's what it seems to be. There is supreme happiness available, but one has to become purified. So these are different levels of consciousness, and we have to move towards the higher level of consciousness. And the more we rise towards the higher levels of consciousness, the more we'll be able to actually relish deeper stability, deeper security, deeper satisfaction, because we are sort of excavating the cosmic onion. Not excavating, or actually peeling the cosmic onion. We are excavating a buried treasure. So onion, there are many layers which are removed, and then the nutritious part comes. So like that, in the initial koshas, one is caught in the peels of the onion. But as one goes towards the more advanced koshas, Jnanamaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya, then one goes beyond all coverings to substance. The real substance is what? The soul, that the person loves Krishna, and that we love Krishna and Krishna loves us. And when we come to that reality, that is the ultimate perfection of life. So we'll continue this chapter in the next class. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.